Hi, and welcome back to Pronunciation with Paul. I've called today's lesson the Tower of Babel, or the Tower of Babel. Brits call it Babel, Americans call it Babel. How fitting that we disagree about the pronunciation of that, because it's the story of how God caused the one original language of the earth to be split into the many that we speak today. It's a myth that occurs not only in the Judeo-Christian Bible, but we find it in the Quran, we find it in the Book of Mormon, the Irish folklore mentions it, we find it in Central America. The Africans near Lake Ngami have that myth in their culture. And we find it in the Tlingit of Alaska. So all over the world there's this story of a one original language and the story of how that language came to be diversified and split into many. Now you and I meet together in the cause of English. We are in search of a global style of English. And of course you are aware that that language, English, being spoken as it is in so many places, is spoken in so many different dialects. I could go to Australia. I could start speaking to you in Australian. And at first you might, if you haven't encountered that dialect, you might be a little puzzled by it. Or if you were to call up a friend in Scotland, you might hear something like I'm speaking now, the Scottish accent, very difficult to understand in its broadest forms. You are interested in being able to hold conversations to understand and be understood by people all over the world, speaking many different styles of English. So part of my job as a pronunciation expert is to assist my clients in becoming more comfortable with the many, many different accents and dialects of English. And today I'm going to introduce 8 of them to you, and the quiz is going to test your ability to hear those 8 different accents. Oh, by the way, you're going to see a marvelous picture, marvelous painting of the Tower of Babel in Unit 2 of this lesson. Well, perhaps I should drop into Cockney, because Cockney is one of the 8 accents that we're going to be talking about today. If you were to call up a friend in London, and you might hear English being spoken like this. It's a little bit difficult to understand, isn't it? But it doesn't take long for you to tune into it. Tune into it. That's so different from American tune into it. Tune, 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 tune. Same language, different accent. I have friends from many different countries whose original language is not English and who speak English in strongly accented speech. So I have Russian friends, and I could briefly launch into Russian accented English, and you'll hear some of the sounds of Russian surviving into my English. Could you understand this? Could they understand you? Who knows? My friends in France, La Belle France. French is one of the few languages that I do speak. I speak English and a little French, so I can say bonjour and comment ça va, and a few other phrases. And I can read French pretty well, but understanding it in conversational contexts is very difficult for me. I can speak English in a French accent, but speaking the French language is difficult for me. We're going to do Southern American today. I'd like you to learn to recognize English as it's spoken in the southern states of America. And of course, there's not just one style of southern speech in America. All the different regions of the South and different classes have slightly different, a slightly different accent. So we're going to be talking about Aussie, Australian English, which I started out with. We'll talk about RP, so very, very conservative people in England. Perhaps you'll tune into the BBC News and you'll hear English being spoken pretty much in this kind of accent. Cockney, I talked about Cockney. Oh, I didn't talk about Yorkshire. If you were to go north of London, up into the counties of Yorkshire, you'd hear English being spoken in this kind of accent. And you might at first have a bit of difficulty tuning into style of speech. You might have real difficulty with some of the broader Yorkshire speakers. I talked about Russian with the trilled R that's so common across the globe. French, which has the uvular trilled R, r. Southern speech. We did a little bit of that. And I spoke to you a little bit in Scottish. So what I thought we'd do is to take one sentence, and you'll see it coming up on your screen in a moment, and I'd speak it in those 8 different accents or dialects of English, and invite you to have a go. Play around with your English. See if you can speak English, not only speak English well, but can you speak it in different accents of English. So let's start with Aussie, and here's the sentence. And an Aussie might say, "We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha." We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. You'll go. So that's Australian English. It's got a little bit of a twang to it, a little bit of slightly different shaped vowels. RP, Standard British English, received pronunciation. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. You'll go. And if we were to launch into a strong Cockney accent, how might the Cockney sound with that? We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We'll go. So how are you doing? Are you managing to speak in a Tower of Babel multitude of accents? What's next? Yorkshire. If we go 150 miles north of London into the counties of Yorkshire, we might hear it spoken like this. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We'll try. So that's Yorkshire. Someone who's from Russia, from Vladivostok, from Moscow, from St. Petersburg, who might speak English in a strong Russian accent, using the sounds of their own language, until they've gotten used to it and learned to speak English better than we do, I'm sure. A very strong Russian accent, though. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. Try it. So that's Russian. Now we have French with the trilled uvular back of the tongue against the soft palate. And a Frenchman might say, or a French woman might say, we can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. Try it. So that's a strong French accent. Southern accent. We can't pass over New York without visiting her aunt. I'm getting muddled myself. Her Aunt Martha. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. One more go. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. Try it. I'm getting a little muddled up with all these accents myself. And the last one, let's do Scottish. A strong Scottish accent. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. We can't pass over New York without visiting her Aunt Martha. Try it. So all those different accents and dialects. The vowels and consonants are pronounced differently. There's a different melody, there's a different tune, there's a different rhythm, and there's a different tonality sometimes. So, if you're doing business globally and you want to understand and be understood by people in many parts of the world, it would be a good idea for you to spend some time getting to know those different accents and dialects. And I refer you to some ways in which you can do that on the second part of this lesson. I've enjoyed it. Hope you've had fun. See you in the second part.